Hi there, I'm Monica Poole, pattern designer and sewing tutor from Australia. And today I'm going to show you how to make this fun quilter-to-go quilt. This quilt is called the Sweet and Sassy quilt. It's one of my most popular designs. It's a crazy patchwork, quilter-to-go, reversible quilt. So let's get started. I'm going to show you how you can make a scrap version of this quilt, but if you'd like all of the detailed instructions, the PDF pattern is available for purchase on our website. I designed this quilt in 2005. My vision was to make a crazy patchwork quilt, but I didn't want to have to sew my pieces onto a fabric base. And then have to trim those into squares, join the squares together, and then have to quilt the quilt as a large quilt top. So this is how I did it. Cut backing squares that are 9.5 inches. Every square can be a different fabric if you want to create a scrappy effect. Cut batting squares that are 8.5 inches. This is going to give you a 1/2 inch gap all the way around the edge of the block. Use a nice flat low loft batting. Position your square of batting so that there is a 1/2 inch gap of fabric all the way around the edge. Hold them together with a light application of basting spray. Today I'm using Hobbs double-sided fusible cotton batting, so I'm just going to flip that over, press that with the iron. That's going to lightly hold my layers together. And I do find that it doesn't leave any glue residue on my ironing mat. For the crazy patchwork, you're going to need lots of wedge-shaped pieces. They're just random sizes, but when it comes to the length, I cut some that are 10.5 inches long. That's going to make them a little bit longer than our block. And we're also going to need some that are 14.5 inches long. We need the longer ones because we want to stitch some of our wedges onto the diagonal of the block. To cut the shorter wedges, start with a piece of fabric that is 10.5 inches long, and then just using your ruler and rotary cutter, just come along and cut random sizes. To cut the longer wedges, start with a piece of fabric that is 14.5 inches long and cut the wedges in the same way. To create a crazy patchwork effect, we're going to sew the wedge-shaped pieces onto the blocks in different directions, such as across, on a diagonal, and also in a fan shape too. For the first block, position 5 wedges onto your batting and backing, just working with random fabrics that look nice together. And you can see I'm alternating between wide at the top and then narrow and then wide. At the sewing machine, thread up with a neutral coloured thread, something that's going to tie in with all of your backing squares. Attach a size 80 quilting needle and set your stitch length to 3. Now, if you don't have a walking foot, that's okay, just try with your normal foot. You're aiming for about 1/4 inch seam allowance. If it's not a perfect 1/4 inch, it doesn't really matter with this quilt. To start sewing, begin with one of your wedges in the centre, and then we're going to take one of our next wedges and put it right sides together with our first one, making sure that we've got an even amount extending over each end of our batting and backing square. And we're going to start level with the edge of our backing fabric, not the batting. Start with a little reverse stitch and sew all the way down to the end. And then we're going to flip our strip over to the right side, smooth that out, and then sew on your next strip. And then start from the other side. Spin your block around. Place your wedge right sides together with the center one and sew. Position your next wedge, once again, right sides together and sew. So basically what you want to do is just cover the batting and backing with your wedge-shaped pieces, so it's going to look like this on the back, and if you have a little bit of a gap, just add another wedge.
Yep.
Repeat the process to sew some wedge-shaped pieces onto the next block, and we're going to sew these in a diagonal fan. So you're going to need some of the longer wedge-shaped pieces just to get started in the middle. Press the blocks. Trim your blocks so that they're level with your backing square, and just double checking that they're still nice and square. So here's our trimmed blocks, and be sure to save some of your larger scraps just for those little random corner pieces that you need to fill in here and there. Make up as many blocks as you like with your wedges sewn on in all different directions. I've made 9 blocks because I'm making a smaller version of my original Sweet and Sassy quilt, which is made up of 36 blocks. So we're going to join our blocks together using the easy cover strip method. You can check out our detailed video tutorial in the card above, but now I'm just going to show you a very quick demo of that. Our cover strip is a 2-inch strip of fabric made up with a 1-inch bias tape maker. Iron 3/4 of an inch wide fusible web strips onto the back of your cover strip. Lay your blocks out in an arrangement that looks pleasing, and then we're going to join them together in rows. And when you join the blocks together, you're going to join them with the backs facing, sewing with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. On the back you'll see that it's nice and neat, and on the top we have the raw seam that we're going to press nice and flat, and you'll see that the seam isn't bulky because of our 1/2 inch gap of batting. Next step is to peel away the paper backing from your strips and iron them over the raw seams. Position the trams 1/2 inch away from the top and 1/2 inch away from the bottom, and that's going to reduce the bulk in the adjoining seams. Now sew on both sides of the tram, sewing nice and close to the edge. So start sewing at the very top and finish sewing at the very bottom. Spin your work around and sew down the other side of your cover strips. Continue joining all of the blocks together to make the rows, sewing on the cover strips. Once you have your rows joined together, take 2 of the rows and place them with the backs facing, and then pin them together, making sure that you align the trams. Then sew your seam with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Press the seams open, iron on your tram and stitch it in place. Start and finish your tram 1/2 inch away from the edge. You'll see that our seam pressed nice and flat because we stopped our tram 1/2 inch away from the edge on our blocks. And when you get to here, when you've got any threads being exposed, just scrape them underneath with your scissors before you sew. Sew on your next row in the same way. So here's my mini, scrappy, crazy patchwork reversible quilt finished. And if you're wondering why I finished my cover strip 1/2 inch away from the edge, well, in our next video I'm going to show you how to do a scallop edging and also show you how to do our machine sewn binding. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.